Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Poker Face, Season 1, Episode 3. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. This episode in particular really messed with my head of just kind of subverting expectations, because we open with the George thing of him being like, I'm a murderer. So I was thinking, like, when we got introduced to Taffy and stuff, I was like, did George accidentally murder his brother or something? And then when things were kind of developing, and then it kind of leans into Taffy's trying to kill his brother and stage it like a suicide. I was thinking like, it's because once again, this sequence of events, I was almost kind of like, did the George thing, like, did George not die? Or like, I was almost wondering if Taffy was going to mess up the suicide attempt, making the murder and to look like a suicide. I thought maybe he messed it up and died or something, and George blamed himself. I didn't know how that was. I know it's stupid in retrospect, but I don't know what I expected that to be. But just like I said, that cold opening of because we bounce around, because we start with that and then we rewind to find out this relationship between Taffy and George, because George doesn't want to cook. He don't want to be the pit master anymore. He wants to be a vegetarian. So he basically wants his brother he wants to take his share of the business and wants to basically be bought out the business and then go and do his own thing, him and his wife and stuff. I had this feeling like when it was sometime after that Taffy was out back and him and Mandy look at each other, and I was like, are you two having an affair? And it seems like they are. But that's what I initially thought it was going to be. I thought it was like they were having an affair. I didn't know they were concocting the plan that they were. But yeah, then when he was recording that thing because once again, I wasn't expecting George to be the victim for whatever reason. I was thinking Taffy was going to be the victim. But in retrospect, it's like, right, Taffy was like dodging people because he owed people money and things business-wise weren't going the way he wanted them to, because he'd spent the money certain ways and lost a lot of the money, so he's trying to work it and get it back. And obviously it's the worst time for his brother, because he was like, we could get so and so to look at the books, but Taffy's like, no, I do the books a certain way, because it's like, because then a lot of nasty stuff will come to fruition. But it's like, so you needed to silence your brother, not only so that you could do what you want with his side of the business, but also keep him from looking into the real books and not the books you're cooking up. But yeah, the whole pre-taping the show, sneaking out, and then setting up the suicide attempt, making it look like his brother committed suicide, and then the dog situation. Once again, kind of a little subverting your expectation, because the dog's barking at him and he doesn't want attention getting drawn, so he hits the dog. You're like, oh my god, you murdered the dog, you picked the dog up, you threw it on the side of the road. I was like, that's horrendous. And then we meet the dog later on, which I'll get to in a second, but I once again, subverting your expectations a little bit. But either way, when it's all said and done, I figured a hiccup would be the fact is that he he got back there slightly in time, but the problem is he didn't go live because he had muted the thing, which that in itself would ultimately be his undoing, funny enough. So the hiccup still ended up being his undoing, but it wasn't the exact reason I thought, because I thought there being a gap between the recording and him talking again. I thought that would have been the hiccup, but it kind of was, but it's because he had muted at a time. Like I said, we'll talk about that later when we get into it. But yeah. And then we rewind to find out how Charlie finds herself in this situation. At the gas station, the dog randomly gets in the car, and I kind of feel bad because I'm like, she wants to get rid of the dog. He's so aggressive and mean. But you're like, I feel bad for the little guy because he gets killed by Taffy later. But then you find out when she's flipping through the radio station that she listens to basically a very hateful radio station, and the dog is super into it. She's like, what? Really? She's like, wow, you suck. You're listening to. She's like, I've had it. I'm snapping. I'm telling you, you homophobic, anti-Semitic dog. And she's just like, I'm getting rid of you. Good. We're done. We're out of each other's lives. And she lets him loose, and he eats some food at the picnic. And ends up now. Charlie has to pay that off, but it's like, let's pay it off by working at the working the pit. So there's multiple things to point out in this situation. One, just that's why I was like, it makes you feel a little conflicted because you're like, oh, the dog's a piece of shit, but even then you're kind of like, and even Charlie feels this later on. It's like, you poor little turd, because it's like, yeah, you might be a piece of shit, but that's some learned behavior stuff. Because we never found out whose dog it was. That had to be someone hateful had that dog beforehand. So that's sad. But what I also think is interesting, the dog liked George. I thought that was interesting. Despite everything, it didn't like Charlie. It obviously didn't like Taffy. But now in retrospect, that might be why it was barking at Taffy, because like on some level it knew. Well, I'm reading way too much into it, but it's interesting. Like I said, like it let George pet it without any issue, so it liked George for whatever reason. I don't know. Maybe there's a little bit of something inside of each one of them, whether it's Taffy or Charlie, that this dog sensed good in people and it sensed the good in George. Even though Taffy does, I mean, I'm sorry, not Taffy, but Charlie does do good. I don't know. Like, maybe she's got her own past and stuff that she's done stuff she's probably not proud of. So it's like, I don't know. It's just interesting because like he wasn't doing all that barking and acting like a maniac. It's just letting George pet him, and just like once again, I guess just being like George is that good of a person that like it overrode the evil of this dog or something. I don't know. But yeah, George teaches Charlie how things work. It's like all the differences in the wood, and you can tell the differences in the wood by actually tasting the wood and stuff like that. And funny enough, we find out that Charlie's the one that actually unintentionally made George go vegan, because it wasn't until they start listing off the movies I was like, well, Oakjail would probably be, and then was like, oh wait, they also mentioned Charlotte's Web. Oh wait, they also mentioned Babe. Who knows what other movies that she made him watch that made him go, I think I said vegetarian earlier, I meant vegan. So yeah, he no longer wants to cook anymore. He feels like a murderer, but it's like, yeah, I don't want to do that anymore. Even though it's like, yeah, he's really good at this job, and because he used to love like the cooking part of it, but now it's just like, yeah, he feels bad about it. And it's like, well, you seem happy, and what are you gonna do now? And he's like, well, because he was asking her about the being on the road, which she's like, oh, it's easy, too easy, in fact, which is kind of a sad thing, because like being on the road, being that easy is kind of sad, because that means you kind of don't have anything to worry about. Like, once again, we haven't really touched on whether or not her parents are still alive. We don't know anything about, other than like her gambling past. We don't know much about Charlie, so we don't know if she's got any family out there to be missing while she's on the road. She's kind of unattached, which is good and bad. Good for the purposes of, hey, you got to go on a run because people are after you, but also it's just kind of a sad existence of you're always on the move, never having anywhere to stay and call home anymore, And also that line from George where he was about to tell her something, but she got called away by Mandy. And it's like, oh, like, I'll tell you later. And she's like, I'll hold you to it. Like that very important thing he wanted to tell her. But yeah, things play out the way they do. And George is found. And obviously, you have Taffy making the whole thing at like his brother's eulogy, being like, well, my brother would want the business to continue. And then you have Charlie say bullshit. Now, there's two ways about that, because for one, she knows like, well, George wouldn't want that in general, because it's like, well, I know like he was moving away from all of this, so he wouldn't want you to continue the business's name. But also like she can tell he's lying. So it's all the same, but still. But for her, it's just kind of like, well, it seemed like she was actually going to leave, because it's like, well, because Bento, who found the body and everything, he was like, oh yeah, it looked like a pretty secure suicide. But Charlie's like, no, he seemed happy. And it's like, would he really do that? And he's like, well, yeah, once people made their mind. And she was going to let it go until she found the doll. And she's like, oh, you poor bastard. Even I was like, oh, that is sad. But it turns out, hey, you're still alive, you little bastard. Takes him to the vet. Finds out like no one ran him over. He got bashed in the head with a piece of wood, and then Charlie takes the wood that the vet took out of his wound, and she starts chewing on it or whatever. And then the vet's like, "What the fuck are you doing?" I think she even said like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And so she's trying to trace that piece of wood to find out what piece of wood hurt that dog, and she ultimately traces it back to a pecan would, because it has a very unique flavor to it. And so she brings this up to Taffy, being like, yeah, like, at first she's like, certain things aren't lining up. It's like, oh, maybe they did what they did to the dog because the dog was a witness. And he's like, Charlie, dogs can't talk. She's like, yeah, I know. But she's like, two incidents, like the thing with George and the thing with this dog happening at the same time. It's like, the timing of it is kind of weird. But even she's like, yo, when your brother told me he was going to tell me something, and I knew he wasn't lying. So, and he made a promise. So it's like, the fact is, why would he do that? Like, if he wasn't sure he was going to be alive, like, to tell me later, why would he even say something like that? So, but he was like, oh, like, I would give this all up to have my brother back. And she just instinctually said bullshit. It's like her auto response to people lying. And even she was like, shit, I wish I hadn't said that. So he's like, cool, you better get out of here before we kill you. And she's like, is that gun for display or use? And he's like, yeah, no, it's more than just display. And she's about to leave, and the dog is with her in the car. And it's like, hey, like, I think I got to get out of here because he was threatening to kill me. The dog's whining. She's like, wait, you want me to avenge you? Why? You suck. It's like, fine. You know, it's like, stay here. I forgot all that she was saying to the dog, but the dog, like, she was literally having a full-blown conversation with the dog like it was talking back to her, which, in their own way, they are. So she stick around and continues to investigate. The first thing was she went to the trailer and ended up smelling the bottle. It's like, doesn't smell like alcohol, but we know that Taffy washed it out to cover up the fact that he, drugged his brother, whatever it was in that, like, was to knock his brother out to make the whole murder stage suicide thing work, even turning it into kind of made it into a slight locked room murder by doing what he did with the floss. It's also interesting when you think about, like, the floss being used to kill George, considering George actually hated that whole thing, because it's like the whole, like, it's a gimmick added to their situation, because he felt like it interrupted the flow of, like, he's all about, like, yo, using everything in an animal, and even if it gets stuck in your teeth, it's still part of the process, and so it just kind of cheapens the whole experience. And that was my takeaway from it. So it's like ironic he hated the floss thing, and that was a major part in his murder. So. But I thought it was interesting that she avoided Taffy, but ended up running into Mandy and explained everything to her. And so it's like, yep, I'm a human lie detector. I think there's something going on here, and she wants to reveal the truth. So she went to the station where, like, basically every radio station she's been listening to is that one guy who also works in the radio station with Taffy. He's just doing different voices. Even, like, the very hateful radio station, that was him. And it's like, because he's like, yeah, kind of a theater kid. And he's just like, oh, you need anything for me? Just ask. I am legitimately bored out of my mind doing this job. So he had to spice things up and just, yeah, the gig is the gig is the gig, right? So that is funny and hilarious that it's like, oh, the person talking like that and making all these, like, hateful points is a black guy, which I'm sure, like, if you really want to, like, dig deep into it, there are layers to that, because obviously there are black people who, like, parrot those same points too. Like, it's not like, oh, you can't be like, oh, that's just a white person thing. It's like, no, there are minorities, who parody and parrot those same talking points too. They might, like, hide behind, like, saying it differently, but meaning the same thing. So I think that's also something. I don't know if I'm, like, my woke liberal mind is, like, reading way more into it being a black guy doing it, but that's just how I read it. If you didn't read it that way, that's perfectly fine. Like, once again, I'm probably overthinking it, but I just thought that was kind of interesting. But she got Taffy's recording from that night, and it's like, could he have left? But it's like, no, because the recording kept going too. Well, it's like, oh, so he was talking the entire time. And so she, like, replayed the footage over and over and over again, and she's just like, yeah, I think he could have done all this. I forgot what it was that she had said. She had made some remark that Charlie immediately knew that she was full of shit. Because it seemed like, okay, we're on the same side here. And then she said something about, like, okay, you need to, I couldn't remember for a second, but now I finally remember. It was the paprika. That's what it was. It was Charlie remembered her asking for the paprika. And it's like, why would you do that? Like, once again, people lie about stupid things all the time. Most of the time, it is stupid things to lie about. But she was like, you said you didn't know where the paprika is, but why? And then she was like, oh, because I wanted Bentio to find it. And then, like, in her head, she's piecing it together, like, oh, the thing she wanted Bentio to find was George's body. And so now it's like, okay, does she have any real evidence or not? And so she ends up confronting Taffy about it, and ended up bringing up what she found out. And it's because of the train, which I didn't even piece that together. I was like, all right, because I completely forgot there was a train. It like was passed, because apparently it's like what it passes by like every, was it half hour or quarter hour? It ended up passing by, and it was passing by during his sausage, pre-recorded thing. And because the mic was muted, because he muted it so no one could hear him like leaving, once again his undoing, because if he had left it live, that little detail wouldn't have, it's so interesting too, because they made that point later on, like as he was like the guy was like, oh, this was so great, and what did Taffy was like, oh, it's all about the details. And it turned, because the main perpetrator behind all this, the entire plan, was Mandy's idea, which that's why I was like, when they were looking at each other, I don't know if they already had that planned ahead of time, but when they were around each other, I think that's when they planned it, because Charlie was working with them for like 3 days, if I remember correctly. So that probably wasn't enough time for them to formulate the plan and come up with everything. But like I said, I mean, what really screwed the pooch on the whole situation was, like, this all did start because Taffy attacked that dog. That's kind of where everything automatically went off the rails. He also like didn't get back in time because he was dealing with that, but also he left that evidence behind, which sent, funny enough, sent Charlie down this path of this investigation. But obviously there was no like proof for the cops, even though she had that recording and stuff like that. It wasn't enough to like, go to the cops about. And so I thought it was so interesting that she's like, okay, I have all the evidence and I'm going into excruciating detail about everything. I was like, what's this setup? And then we get him calling his wife, and I was like, did you convince him to try and cut a deal so he's going to turn on his wife first? But then we find out it's the radio guy. I was like, oh, that's so good. So I was like, how is she going to handle it? She's like, I'm going to be here in 10 minutes. But then the thing between Charlie and Taffy went on for 20 minutes, and she's going on and on and on. And he's like, Charlie, what the fuck are you talking about? It's just fucking nonsense. What is it doing? She's like, oh, well, none of it mattered. He's like, what? Like, none of it mattered, because she's like, the most important thing your brother taught me about, the most important thing when it came to the cook is what your brother taught me. And he's like, what is it? And she's like, the stall. I was like, oh my God, that's so beautiful, and that's so good. Because he taught her that, it's like, right, the cook stays at like rises and rises until it hits 168 degrees, and it stays there for about the next 4 or 5 or 6 hours, and that's what kind of makes all the difference. And it's like, and that's the name of the episode too, the stall. It's like, that is just so beautifully, like, I don't know, serendipitous wouldn't be the right word, but it's just like everything being like just tied together in a little bow like that. But then Mandy shows up, and she's like, that man over there, he's the one that killed my husband. So now Taffy's going down because she sold him out. But they also played the recording of her talking to who she believed was Taffy on the phone, being like, oh, nothing would have been wrong if you hadn't everything would have gone according to plan if you had killed not attacked that dog. And she's like, well, shit, because she's literally beside the cop who was just consoling her in the car, and now he's looking at her like, wait, what's this all about? So, yeah, they ended up getting busted for it. And it's such a shame, killed by your own brother and your wife. That's all kinds of effed up, dude. But, Charlie got some justice for him. Took down some very bad people. And then the radio guy at the end is still doing his thing. And he's like, yeah, this goes out there to the truth tellers who make the world a better place. And then he proceeded to go down some horrible points. And Charlie was just like, I gotta cut this shit off. I was like, there's no way she's keeping the dog, right? And no, she's not. Radio dude is keeping the dog. To be fair, like, the thing he does brings that dog peace. So he's kind of the perfect person for the dog. So I was like, oh, Okay, I mean, you're cute and everything, despite you being a little, little terrible hellion. You're still adorable, but adorable and cute things can be terrible as well too. So nice, interesting resolution to the whole situation. So I'm very, very excited to see where the next episode ends up taking us going forward with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.